Hello, I'm Theodore Parker, and this is the Sideshow. Today is Tuesday, January 18th, 2022. Around here, we got some cold temperatures still lingering a little bit, around 18 degrees. So, with the accompanying situation of a variant of Delta 19, Omicron, we still want to deal with the mask. You might have some N95s available, which you can make use of, opposed to surgical masks, disposable. Sanitize those hands. Got a lot of activities going on today. I'm quite sure your area's, as I say, packed full of news. But since we just came through, just celebrated Martin Luther King Day on a national level, I thought it'd be good to kind of touch down and review some of the things that have occurred that makes Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech closer to reality. We know we still have opposing factions racially and ideologically, politically, and in some cases religiously, about what's going on. Just check your news to get a cross section of whatever area is being talked about. So I wanted to look at it from a little different aspect for just a few minutes. You know, the times in which we're living here now that we're in 2022, we can look back and see if anybody's really decided to put any effort into making that dream a reality, and how can it be done? Especially when you have some people that don't want change and some people that do want change, and how can you best affect change in a positive way? So we're going to talk about it. I ran across this little item, and it has a few details, and we'll kind of get to the point, but I want to set it up. In regards to early promises after slavery to 40 acres and a mule, you might see it referenced in Spike Lee's movie projects, 40 acres and a mule, the possible promise of that as government reparations. There we have it, the word reparations, which has also been spoken on. So, this has to do with that. So let me kind of handle it for you and we'll get right to it. In championing nonviolent protests to dismantle Jim Crow segregation, Martin Luther King Jr. always reminded his audience of his ultimate vision for America, the creation of the beloved community, a world in which all people could live together as brothers in community and not continually live with bitterness and friction. For King, the beloved community was not a utopian abstract, but a realistic, if radical vision for racial integration and reconciliation that a critical mass of committed citizens could achieve. Getting there required gathered information about existing systems of injustice and educating others about them. Then, through direct action, a coalition of humans normally driven apart by the ideology of white supremacy to work together to dismantle its structures and render former enemies ideally friends. This vision seems impossible in American 2022, at a time when democracy is under assault, disinformation and toxic polarity reign, and the coalition that elected President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris struggles with internal disagreements over policy priorities and how woke to be in confronting a legacy of racial oppression. After a century of systemic racial discrimination in housing and other areas, America's system of residential caste is still often tolerated if not rarefied, with public policy that concentrates poverty in some areas and wealth in others. Expression in the hood, raised in the hood. Specifically, reparations have been directed towards changes in housing. To not have a line of demarcation, which you probably heard the expression red lighting, where poor people are here, rich people are there, and you just stroll through the city and say, oh, this is the rich neighborhood. Oh, that's the poor neighborhood. Oh, we in the ghetto, etc., etc. So cities have been more in a position, so it would seem, to change this than our federal government. So these are some of the cities that have effective change from what was to what is now. Los Angeles County, with the support of state legislation, recently devised prime oceanfront property known as Bruce's Beach to descendants of a black couple from whom the land was wrongly taken a century earlier. That property has been returned to the family. Nearby Santa Monica recently gave priority access to new affordable housing to descendants of the roughly 600, mainly black families that were displaced from their homes by the mowing of Interstate 10 through their neighborhoods in the 1950s. Evanston, Illinois created a program of housing reparations for black families intentionally harmed by racist practices and exclusionary zoning from 1919 to 1969. It was the first concrete policy resulting from the City's Council's 2019 resolution to end structural racism and achieve racial equality. Even more radically, in 2018, Minneapolis, the scene of much police law enforcement activities, repealed its single-family home zoning, a policy that maintains race and class segregation across the country, in part by keeping affordable housing out of affluent communities. Minneapolis repealed that. Right here in Louisville, have staunchly proposed school integration or promoted school integration rather than give up on it, disrupting a long history of disinvestment in black and minority communities. That's just a quick overview of some areas that we think might be quote unquote impossible to change. Some people that have touched on it besides this article that I'm referencing here. Soledad O'Brien did some things about it. Families living near a factory in Texas. So the awareness level is coming up, but to actually have concrete action is what I'm bringing to your attention today. So you don't have to always, turn a blind eye. And since we've been, for lack of a better way of saying it, conditioned to be broiled up in, federal government, backpedaling or just being involved in so much bureaucracy and then things being held up by red tape, it's just like it could be stalled for years before you see any concrete evidence of something happening from what is proposed, written into a bill, which I've described many, many times, proposed, written into a bill, put into the House of Representatives, voted on with everything else that's going on, passed over to the Senate with everything else that's going on, voted on and passed into law. This is what President Joe Biden is experiencing right now. But we adapt, but something concrete that can be done on a city level, reparations, to make amends for how things were just wrongly taken from black families in particular and people of color in general. That's a concrete realization of Dr. Martin Luther King's dream. So I leave you with that. Tuesday, January 18th, 2022. That's it. Hashtag.